Monday's rites began with 96 bell rings, one for each year of Queen Elizabeth's life at Westminster Abbey, where her state funeral was to be held. More than 90 world leaders, representatives from dozens of royal families and members of the House of Windsor, including the Queen's great-grandchildren, George and Charlotte, attended a large initial service which was followed by a procession to Windsor Castle along a route lined with dense crowds. She was carried to the Abbey on the state-gun carriage of the Royal Navy, drawn by 142 sailors. The carriage was last seen in 1979 for the funeral of Prince Philip's uncle, Lord Mountbatten, and was used for the Queen's father, George VI, in 1952. The Queen's coffin was topped with the royal standard, the imperial state crown, the sovereign's orb and scepter, and a wreath made up of flowers and foliage chosen by the king, picked from Buckingham Palace and the king's homes of Clarence House and Highgrove. The route was lined by the Royal Navy and Royal Marines, and a guard of honor stood in Parliament Square made up of 3 military services accompanied by a Royal Marines band. The Queen's lifelong sense of duty was remembered at her state funeral service attended by 2,000 guests at Westminster Abbey. And after the service, which was conducted by the Dean of Westminster, with the Archbishop of Canterbury giving the sermon, the Queen's coffin was then drawn in a walking procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch at London's Hyde Park corner. Later on, the hearse arrived in Windsor and continued in walking procession up Windsor Castle's long walk and finally at St. George's Chapel for a commutal service. Queen Elizabeth II's corgis, Muick and Sandy, were brought outside Windsor Castle ahead of the arrival of her coffin. And the horse, Emma, her fell pony, was also waiting. St. George's Chapel is the church regularly chosen by the royal family for weddings, christenings, and funerals. It is where the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Prince Harry and Meghan, were married in 2018, and where the Queen's late husband, Prince Philip's funeral was held. Attended by a smaller, more personal congregation of about 800 guests, the commutal service was conducted by Dean of Windsor, David Corner. The service, whose congregation was largely made up of current and former staff from the Queen's household and private estates, included traditions symbolizing the end of her reign. The imperial state crown and the sovereign's orb and scepter were removed from the top of the coffin by the crown jeweler, separating the Queen from her crown for the final time. At the end of the last hymn, the King then placed the Queen's company camp color or flag of the Grenadier Guards on the coffin. The Grenadier Guards are the most senior of the foot guards carrying out ceremonial duties for the monarch. At the same time, the Lord Chamberlain, former MI5 chief, Baron Parker, broke his wand of office and placed it on the coffin. The snapping of the white staff signals the end of his service to the sovereign as her most senior official in the royal household. The Queen was then lowered into the royal vault, and the sovereign's piper played before a blessing and the singing of God Save the King. Buckingham Palace said the performance by the piper at Windsor was something the Queen had personally requested.